Hello, I'm Anna Hollinrake. I am a game artist and illustrator. I work at Climax Studios. My views are my own, obviously. I'm so sorry, I am one of those people that put the Twitter hashtag thing at the bottom of the screen. But, you know.
I knew after I said it.
Yeah. But, you know, hashtag social media. I am not going to be talking about my studio work. I'm actually going to be talking about my personal work and my relationship with it. Because it's only really been in the past year and a half that I feel like I've kind of found my artistic voice. And let's be real here, I could talk about composition and colour theory and that kind of thing, but like the people, like the artists here will already know it better than me, and everyone else like will just be like, it's not that useful. But the thing is, if you're here in this room, I'm pretty sure that you're here to grow and better your craft, and I think that our relationships with our work are fundamentally important. So, back to the Dark Ages. I originally started off on DeviantArt, drawing terrible anime. It was just the worst kind of stuff, like, just not a good time. However, I decided to move into the vague and intimidating world of concept art. And because of that, I was fortunate enough to study game art at De Montfort University, as well as supplementing my knowledge with like study groups and Facebook groups and everything that fostered a community of improvement. But I definitely started to find that I would be up at 4 AM surrounded by coffee cups, my dinner consisting entirely of Mr. Kipling French fancies, just freaking out because my perspective wasn't quite right or my anatomy in my drawing was slightly off. And that might sound a bit familiar to you, maybe, hopefully. And that's why I'm going to be talking about burnout and why it kept happening to me. I'm definitely the kind of person that just keeps going through a problem rather than taking a step back, but I've now gained those hard-won lessons, to moderate myself. And that's not to say I don't get burnt out anymore, I absolutely do. But it made me wonder, what changed? Back in my DeviantArt heydays, I was drawing girls with guns jumping over walls, looking really cool, and it was great, and I was having so much fun. But then 4 years on, in my second year of university, I'm just filled with anxiety and self-loathing because I just felt like I was going to fail. And it made me wonder, when did my relationship with my creativity change and what happened? So, unhealthy work and study attitudes. I kind of started off with carefree sketching. And then moving to taking this seriously concept art, you get a lot of culture changes. Like, you know, there's less floating rose petals and more grunge textures. But also other things, like coffee was now a food group. And we would stand in the corridors, I remember we'd stand there and we'd all be in a circle looking slightly like just dead. Like just kind of half proud, half shattered, bragging about how little sleep we got that night. People would post on Facebook, paint through the pain or get good. And it was just this constant kind of, people would be like, yeah, keep going. And it seems funny from the outside, and they were kind of self-aware, kind of self-deprecating jokes. But they had this undercurrent of, if I don't work all hours of the day, I'm a failure. And the problem is, like, and I'm fairly sure that other people have felt that pressure, but the problem is, these outward pressures might have been jokes, but there's an undercurrent of glamorizing suffering for our craft. And these messages might seem like just off the cuff, kind of like, haha, yeah, you know, oh, look at us, just struggling. But once you internalize those messages, your relationship with your work can change. And it's like, you think that you can see it happening, but it's like advertising, you're lucky if you notice. And I mean, because I internalised these messages, I was getting these thoughts of, oh, I'm not good enough, I've got to keep going, I've got to keep going away at something. And one moment you're drawing girls with guns jumping over walls and it's great fun, and you're having a great time, and the next moment you can find yourself in an emotionally abusive relationship with yourself. And that's what leads to anxiety and depression and a hell of a lot of RSI. So I feel like the best kind of, example of this was the schedule that I made for myself. You'll notice there are no days off. And me and my friends, like lots of people I know, we were all posting these kind of things. I was expecting, like completely anticipating myself to wake up and do some art, and then have lunch, do more art, have dinner, more art, and then go to sleep. And that was kind of it. I was like, friends? Like, days off? Like, in my weird kind of like stressed out mind, I was going to win at art, and I was determined. I had my Wacom tablet, my determination, and I would just keep going. Everything would be fine. And that's not how things work at all. If you want to win at art, which isn't something you can do, you need a good foundation. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Obviously, you've got achieving your full potential, something I'm sure everyone here wants to do, right? And have a positive creative output. You got that at the top, and then obviously you've got your physiological needs. However, like after years of just internalizing all these negative messages of like coffee is all we need, my pyramid didn't really look like this. It kind of looked like this. And that's not sustainable. Like, it is not in the slightest. You just have to take some time away. So, healthy work and study attitudes. With hindsight, it's easy to see what I should have been doing. My biggest leaps forward creatively are when I'm working for myself, like when I'm learning. I'm going ahead and I'm just playing, I'm not expecting anything, and that's okay. And that can be sporadic. You can't plan for that. Like, sometimes you just need to let your creativity just go a bit nuts. And I'm an experiential learner as well. People learn in very different ways. And I've kind of made peace with the fact that I cannot sit through a 4-hour video tutorial and I will be asleep in 15 minutes. I just have to go to a program and just keep like running into things, and eventually I'll get there. But the thing is, when you internalize those negative beliefs, to some extent you're making your work in accordance with other people's requirements. And when you do that, creativity and learning being so deeply personal, you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So, to forge that positive creative relationship with yourself, there are things that you kind of need to do just to be happier in yourself. And you don't often see that you're being cruel to yourself until someone points it out. And I believe that knowing is half the battle. So, give yourself permission. I still struggle with this now. I find it hard to take time away from my work, but allowing yourself time away is really fundamental. A day of procrastination can be an awful lot more tiring than actually doing the thing you're supposed to do. So I find giving myself permission, sometimes standing in front of the mirror, sometimes writing it down, that I expect nothing from this day, or evening, or hour, is okay. And if you set up your intentions in that way, rather than, I don't know, accidentally, half accidentally, half on purpose, kind of marathoning Netflix in your pajamas and just feeling sad afterward, you should set up your intentions. Marathon Netflix in your pajamas with intention. It is absolutely way better. And the thing is, exhaustion does not equal laziness. Procrastination happens, obviously, when you just don't fancy it, but it's important to be able to tell the difference. Discipline is important, absolutely. Like, creative development is really difficult, but it is a skill to be able to tell when time out is needed. And you need to recharge your batteries, right? I love this term, creative inhaling. The Oatmeal did a comic recently about how creativity is like breathing. And we can't just keep on exhaling work and putting stuff out there and expecting it to be good or expecting us to feel like satisfied in it. Jake Parker, the guy that kind of started Inktober off, talks about your creativity bank and how going and looking in nature or looking like films, music, all sorts of things, top yourself up and give you like that room to work from. Build that creative library, like couple it with time off. It's a win-win. And when you're down on yourself, it's hard to get out of those bad psychological spirals. Preventative measures are great, but with anxiety and depression, negative messages can just build up and just kind of shout at you. There's some things that I do to kind of provide context, because you can self-assess if you're in a good place, but it can be really hard to do when you're in a bad one. So there's 2 things that I do that might be useful. First of all, I visualize someone that I really care about having the same issues that I am. And I think about what I'd say to them and the advice that I give to them. And 9 times out of 10, I would never say the things that I'm saying to myself to them. I would be an absolute monster. It would be horrendous. And that tends to give me a little bit of space. The second thing that I do is I visualise me in 5 to 10 years' time, and future Anna has got it all together, and she's like got great hair, and she's like just really on it. And she gives me that kind of context, I guess. Like, and she's like, yeah, it's fine, don't worry, it's all good, it's cool. And that takes steps to kind of safeguard, like, when you're in a bad place. Like, write things down, just try to look after yourself in those moments. And then don't bottle things up. I've made the effort recently to be honest on Twitter. Like, I'm very guilty of putting a positive spin on things. And because of that, I've definitely found that I have more support from places that I didn't entirely expect. As well as that, talking to professionals is just so important. I hate how stigmatized a lot of this is. I think it's really important that we need to start talking about it. As creatives, we are very susceptible to all of this. And just talk to people, see professionals, and recognise that when someone is unnervingly cheerful on Twitter, you're probably looking at their highlight reel. And ultimately, when it does come to creating stuff, make what you want to see. Absolutely push yourself. Absolutely put yourself out of your comfort zone. But listen to what brings you joy, not what brings someone else that joy. You can tell when someone has loved making something. It shines in their work. And when you get to see it, just find what shines with you. Like, not just what's popular. I've tried to do photo bashing and traditional fantasy, sci-fi, just all sorts of stuff, but ultimately, like, it wasn't until I was just like, I'm gonna do all of this whimsical stuff that I really kind of felt happy in what I did. So I guess what I'm encouraging is just listening to what you need. It's easier to listen to the zeitgeist or to artists you look up to, but what works for them might not work for you. Like, I see the irony in talking about not taking people's word as gospel, like doing a talk about that. But I didn't use the soft brush until last year in Photoshop, because when I was 15, another artist told me it was a sign of a bad artist. And I just want to encourage people to think about when they're happiest when they work, and take stock of that situation. Just write it down if need be, because to make creative, engaging, and moving work, we have to take care of ourselves. And I included a TED Talk quote from Elizabeth Gilbert's Your Elusive Creator in an attempt to look fancy. Somehow we've completely internalised this notion that creativity and suffering are inherently linked, and that artistry will always lead to anguish. And I think that's absolutely true, not just for games, but just creative people as a whole. We really need to challenge this image of the tortured artist or the tortured creator. Because mental health is important and stigmatised and affects so many of us. And if we do that, won't that enable us to make more successful work in the long run? I think it's really important that we take steps to cherish ourselves, maybe rather than writing another Facebook status about how we can sleep when we're dead. So stop it. We can do better. Thank you very much for listening.
Seems like you've recently kind of been getting together on this. Is this kind of like a recent realisation for you? Is it?
Not really. I think just after, it's that kind of taking a step back and realising that, seeing it happen to other people and putting the pieces together, I guess. Like, I don't know, I was the person, like, in first year, I painted like for 18 hours solid, like when it didn't even affect my grade, like on beforehand in day, and I just wrecked my hands for about 4 months. And after that, I was like the kind of my university year's physiotherapist, because it was like I had gone through the summer of like just doing stretches and everything, and then gradually I just watched pretty much all of my friends get issues with their hands because they were just like working themselves to the bone. And it's just kind of watching that happen. I don't know, there's been a push for like mental health kind of support and that kind of thing. I think also being on Twitter more, like a lot of people are much more vocal advocates for just looking after yourself and trying to have those healthy mentalities on Twitter. And there's a lot more people I find just being like, okay, just have a day off, take a step back, you'll be all right. Like, and I think that's kind of helped it click a lot more for me now. So I don't know. Hopefully it's useful.
It's really useful. I think there's a huge kind of problem within the games industry where we're all made to feel like we need to be working all hours of the day, and it's not, before anything else, it's not healthy. It's not good for your mental state, and it leads to bad work ultimately, and we need to start pulling back from that.
Yeah, well, it's just like just seeing people working on their personal projects and like just studying as well. I think my main kind of experience of this was when I was studying, and like I find the minute that people like get jobs, they're like, oh, I can take time away from my work. Like that's a thing. I can leave it at the office. Like that's okay. But yeah, it's definitely when I was studying that I think this really kind of reached its point. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, got in back.
I don't have a job to go to.
Yeah.
As any dev, my company is me.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I'm not working, there's this huge feeling of guilt.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. Yeah.
You know, I can't just leave the office and leave the work behind. It's my stuff. How are you dealing with self-guilt?
I try to, like, the whole allowing myself a day off kind of thing, because I did freelance for a while, and sometimes, like, I would just be working in my office, and suddenly it would be, like, I don't know, midnight, and I was like, I need to do something, I need to take a step away. I found that kind of structuring something in the morning where I got to go out and have a walk, like take like time away from just the office really helped me. Like I don't know whether structuring and scheduling stuff helps you, obviously not the schedule that I made for myself because that was madness, but yeah, just kind of I find that I have to really tell myself that I'm allowed to take time off. Like it's all very well and good saying like, oh it's fine, I'll just take 15 minutes, but being like, no, this is my time, nothing has to happen right now. Like just being really forceful with yourself. Like, I don't know, that really helps me. So, yeah. Yeah.
When suffering burnout and just like complete lack of motivation to do any kind of creative thing, is there any ways that you found that you could help yourself to actively get motivation, but not without stretching yourself, just something that was fun?
I guess it's the whole thing where you take some time away and then you just look at other stuff. Like you just allow yourself to maybe look at things that you aren't really, like you aren't so used to taking in, I guess. Like just consuming different kinds of media, maybe trying something different, just taking some time away from the norm. There's this really interesting term called liminal space, I think that's how you pronounce it, where basically you put yourself in a different and slightly, not super uncomfortable hopefully, but different kind of situation, and because of that slight kind of mental uncomfortable feeling, you're able to make jumps that you wouldn't usually be able to make. And I think that maybe putting yourself in that space in a kind of not too far kind of way, like in a kind of where you're not just throwing yourself into, I don't know, like scuba diving or something if you're terrified of deep water, just doing something a little bit different and allowing yourself, just not expecting anything. But if something turns up, then that's good. Like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah?
Sorry, this might be really controversial, but do you think there's a slight irony in that? Do you think the amount of hours you put in that crunch time, those years of crunch, that has contributed to your actual ability and skill level now?
Well,
do you think?
No, I totally get what you mean. Yeah. I think it's this really interesting thing, because this is what I struggled with. I was like, oh, well, you know, the 10,000 hour rule, I'll just keep going at something. But I was learning in the wrong way. Like, I didn't take a step back and be like, oh, well, you know, I don't actually get anything from these videos, but everyone else is getting something from these videos. So I would just, like, I would be doing these studies where I would just be copying a picture, but that was what everyone else was doing. Like, I wasn't actually looking at it and saying, okay, this is why this brush stroke is like implying that shape. I wasn't thinking as much as I should have done. But I realised that I learn most when I'm just messing around and playing. That's me personally. And that was me figuring out how I learned better, because all of like this stuff is a mile, like a country mile away from the stuff I used to do back when I was studying like that. Like I've recently been doing characters, and that was just a weekend of me studying properly how people approach them. And it is like, it definitely, you have to work at something, but there's a difference between being diligent and being exhausted. And I think, yeah, it's a difficult balance, but like I think it's really important to assess how you learn and like approach it that way, because once you can kind of like hack your brain, that definitely helps. So yeah.